It's another Moss Football Friday, and we're one short because we gave the 76-year-old TJ the night off. But you got me, you got Vegas Mack. We've got another big weekend of football, Mack. And the interesting thing is we're building to that point. We all know October 12th is legit in college football. But October 19th isn't that bad either. But we're here now, and we've got a good slate this weekend. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Hey, before we get started, what's this here? What's going on? What is that? What is that?
That's a baseball hat. Hold on.
Oh, nice.
Mike's Royals are in the division series that starts tomorrow night against the Yankees. The boys are playing some ball. And first and foremost, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, partner. But not to cut you off, but anybody that wants to say I'm on the Royals bandwagon, look at how disgusting this hat is. I've had this hat for a while. And I say my Royals because those of you that have been dedicated to us for a long time, I said my surprise team to go to the postseason was the Royals. They didn't just get there. Now they're playing the freaking Yankees, and it starts tomorrow, and I can't wait to see it.
All right. Well, it's not the Bobby Witt special, but it's good.
Bobby Witt. I mean, you want to talk about, before we get into the football side of things, you want to talk about a guy, and it's amazing. We watch these guys all the time, Mac. The guys, and you got to play at a way higher level than I ever did. But you watch the guys, whether it's basketball, football, that we're going to talk obviously all about here, NBA, NHL, whatever the case. You watch the guys that play the game the right way. And if you watch the clincher the other night when they knocked off Baltimore, the game-winning run was Bobby Witt legging out a ground ball on the infield to get to first base to send the Orioles to the Bronx. I mean, those are the guys. How can you not love watching guys like that?
I know. The amazing stat that they showed is that he's actually like the fastest from home to first in Major League Baseball. I mean, for a shortstop, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's just absolutely incredible. We've got all kinds of football stuff going on this weekend. We're going to dive right into it. We have the Mack 12 every week that comes out on Tuesdays for you. This week, we finally brought my top 5 in to catch everybody up that hasn't seen it. Again, follow us on all socials, except for Snapchat, because that's dumb as hell. Follow us on all socials at Mike Arana Show. My top 5, Texas, 1, Bama, Oregon, Ohio State, and Georgia. The Mack top 5 out of the Mack 12, Bama, Texas. So we're flip-flop 1 and 2. You have Tennessee 3, Ohio State 4, where we're even on Ohio State. You have Mizzou 5. I left Georgia 5. Where are you at on your top 5?
Again, everybody knows that was a great game. Let's just start there. A great game on Saturday to watch. And like I said, I think you have to reward teams when they play against big opponents. And that was a big opponent, and Alabama won. And that's the only reason I moved them up against Texas. As I said, Texas is going to have a chance when they play Oklahoma to regain that spot easily. But again, you got to reward the teams when they play big games. I don't care how you win that. Nobody cares. The bottom line is Alabama won that game. They deserve to move into that top spot. Texas didn't do anything wrong. Just Alabama deserved it this week.
Yeah, and the performance in it, those of you that do follow us, you saw on Mike's Man Crush, Ryan Williams, 17 years old, the most electrifying. Sorry, Dwayne, I didn't mean to steal your line, but the most electrifying 75-yard touchdown. That game lost its ever-loving effing mind in the mid to late third quarter into the whole fourth. That was a roller coaster, and this is why we love sports, man. I mean, we were group texting, the three of us, TJ, you and I, and myself. That game was the ride of rides, and that's why we love college football. And that touchdown from Ryan Williams, and the dude's 17 years old. And I think of the dumb crap I did at 17. I'm sure you can relate. He is unbelievable.
Absolutely. My son's just a few months younger than him, and that's all he kept saying. He goes, that kid's only like 5 months older than me. Look what he's doing. He's dominating the conference. He's dominating football. It was great. It was great to see.
That was incredible. So let's go 1-2. We already talked about the 1-2. We get different on the 3-4-5. Again, my 3-4-5, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. And I know all you Buckeye fans are, how can you have Oregon ahead of us? Here's why I have Oregon ahead of Ohio State, because we got plenty of just very thoughtful and well-written DMs this week when my top 5 went up about Oregon ahead of Ohio State. Here's the difference. Oregon played Boise and beat Boise. Ohio State has played Little Sisters of the Poor. And I'm not saying it's just Ohio State. We've talked about cupcakes to cupcakes. Right. But Oregon, especially with Dylan Gabriel, and we'll get to the Ducks game coming up here in a few hours tonight, but Oregon with the veteran quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, and they beat Boise. And I still think the problem is people don't realize how damn good Boise is. Ashton Genty, we all know about him. That's a huge win for Oregon that Ohio State doesn't have yet.
No, and I agree. For me, I mean, yes, I agree. That is a huge win. Oregon they don't seem like they're hitting on all cylinders yet. They seem still a little off. Like, I don't know what it is. And that's the only reason I don't have them as high as you do. I haven't seen that real big signature game from them. And again, you could look at it and say, well, Tennessee hasn't played anybody yet. But here's the thing. I just love teams that when they have a opponent that they're supposed to win and supposed to beat by maybe 20 or 30 points, and you actually go out and do it, that's impressive to me. Because, listen, we've both been on that sideline before, and there are games where you feel that you should win by a large margin, and you can't get your team to do it. And when Tennessee can do it consistently, that's what I'm looking for. And here's the thing. We saw it last week with Ole Miss. I had Ole Miss up there, and I said, okay, here you go. Prove it to me. And you know what? Maybe that Kentucky team, not offensively, but defensively, that Kentucky team is pretty darn good. And they didn't. Ole Miss didn't answer the bell. So we're going to see, does Tennessee answer the bell this week?
Well, and I got to give you credit for that you brought it up. I mean, your thing last week when you were doing the Mac-12 was, can Kentucky play Ole Miss like they did Georgia? And defensively, they did exactly that. And Jackson Dart, again, another thing that we're getting thoughtful, well-written DMs about, that I didn't move Jackson Dart off of my top line of the Heisman. He didn't play a bad game. He threw a touchdown, didn't throw a pick, threw for about 267 off the top of the memory there. Big play Trey Harris is another reason why I still think Ole Miss is dangerous. They have South Carolina this weekend, then LSU. And this is the hard part of the new realignment is Ole Miss doesn't get the big games unless they get to Atlanta. But with the expanded playoffs, I still think Ole Miss will be there. But that Kentucky team defensively, you nailed it last week. Like, they are good. We've both got Ohio State in the 4 spot. Obviously, Nico Iamaleava, I'm all over him. I think he's a riser, maybe or maybe not. No, I'm just going to say it. I have a bet on him to win the Heisman. I know it's a long shot in his position. But where it gets really interesting here is you dropped Ole Miss from 2 to 10, I believe it was, 10 or 11 in the Mac-12. Georgia, for me, and there's a lot of people crapping on Georgia, and I don't get this. Ryan Williams torched one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in all of college football. I'm not going to just take Georgia because they lost on the road in Tuscaloosa and just forget that they're any good. That's why I have Georgia 5. I know Mizzou, but again, when we break all this down, we stop and pause for a second. What are we talking about? We still have, with realignment, SEC dominance, and that's the bottom line.
Exactly. And Georgia's not that far. They're just 1 or 2 spots down. But again, I like, especially early in the year, giving some of these teams a chance to show me what they can do. And like I said, I gave Ole Miss a chance. I'm giving Tennessee. I'm giving Missouri a chance. I'm not overly impressed. If you ask me right now, if Missouri played Georgia, who would I take? I would take Georgia and wouldn't even think about it. But I'm giving them a chance. I want to see what they can do.
Yeah, Mizzou's in a good spot. And when you got Brady Cook and Luther Burden III, I mean, you're going to be all right a lot of the time. So we've got a lot going on there. Let's slide to tonight's game. The Friday night slate, sometimes it's a turd. I like this, and it's interesting. I don't like it because we've got great games. I mean, Right, we'll start with the first one. Michigan State travels to Autzen. They get number 6 in the AP poll, Oregon, who's a 23.5-point favorite. Dylan Gabriel, and this is my thing with the Ducks, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. They're favored by 23.5. The over-under is sitting about 52. It's hovering, it's moving. Obviously, lines move all the time, but Oregon with Gabriel has seemed to be able to manage things.
Again, this is the opportunity. I hate those big spreads in that. I mean, it's so hard. I mean, Michigan State's not that bad of a team. Their biggest thing, and the kid right next door is a huge Michigan State fan, my son. He loves Michigan State. He watches everything. I'm letting you know what he's called for. He wants a change at quarterback. That's been the biggest thing with Michigan State so far. A lot of turnovers from their offense at critical times. It happened in the BC game. It happened in the Ohio State game. Michigan State, again, not a bad team, just a lot of turnovers. And you can't give a team like Oregon, especially at home, those opportunities. But for me, this is one of those games where I want to see Oregon put up a big number against Michigan State, because that's what Ohio State did. And I got to start to be able to compare, and that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and an underlying factor here that I haven't really heard a whole lot of people talk about. This is Jonathan Smith's Michigan State team at Autzen, which will be charged as all hell tonight for an Oregon Friday night home game. But Jonathan Smith knows that from his time at Oregon State. So I'm interested to see how prepared the Spartans are to go into Autzen. The other game, which to me is massively fascinating, is right down the street from you. We've got Syracuse and Kyle McCord traveling to UNLV to take on the Rebels, who are still undefeated. And here's the thing that jumps off the page, and we know the Matt Sluka talk. We know it's UNLV, not UNILV. Thanks to you guys for the shout. And if you're watching, the guy that posted that sign, nobody's giving you credit for it. Please DM us, because I'd love to give you credit for it. Because when you sent that to me from the game last week, it was amazing. It was a great sign. And there's a lot of people on both sides of this argument. We've had a couple comment in our social areas like, hey, why, everybody's crapping on a kid that was promised something. None of us were in that room. He said, none of us know. And the consensus, especially when you see how the Rebels responded to it, not only on the field while you were there the other day, but just in general, hey, the captain's coming out and going, QB1, let's ride. There was a lot there that we don't all know. We're not going to hammer a kid if he was promised $100,000. He should have got his $100,000. But you're not getting both sides of the story here, and likely never will. What was the vibe in the building on Saturday when you were there?
It was actually, again, I'm using my son as a gauge because he's gone to every UNLV game basically in the last 2 years. He said that this game, they had more people at this game than almost any other game that he's been to so far. So, I mean, there was a lot of energy in that crowd. They played really well. Now, here's my thing. I watched that game. Fresno was not good. They're not a state. They were not a very good football team either. So, thanks, TJ. I'm stealing your line.
Yeah,
but,
you just made TJ proud.
Yeah. I mean, but they weren't good. But listen, as I said, UNLV did what they had to do. They looked really, really sharp on both ends of the ball. And offensively, I mean, they put up a big number. They put up a lot of yards. It was the most yards they had in the game. They put up a lot of points. They threw the ball. They ran the ball. They looked really, really good. Again, I don't know how strong an opponent that was, but they got the job done. This is going to be a big matchup for them. And I hope they're not looking too far ahead. I know they got
arguably the biggest game in UNLV history at home.
Every week it's the biggest game in UNLV history. It really is. But there is an energy there. I'm gonna tell you, the people here at that stadium think UNLV is going to the playoffs. That's the expectation of the fan base, believe it or not. They think, especially now with this change of quarterback, they think they're going to go to the playoffs.
To quote one of my broadcast mentors in my life, the legendary Arizona people know who I'm talking about, Mike Jarecki, dreaming's free. They're not going to the damn playoff. Here's the thing, that the over-under, 58.5, the Rebels early in the week, 6.5. It's kind of fluttered. I think it's going to stay around a touchdown. Kyle McCord transfers from Ohio State. He's up at Syracuse, nearly 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. So there's a part of me that thinks with all the distractions, UNLV got a cupcake last week in Fresno State. Now they're getting Syracuse, and I'm not saying Syracuse is world beaters. Syracuse is also the same team that lost at friggin' home to Stanford.
Right,
but
right.
And
don't
six
forget,
and a half points seems egregious. Why? I don't see pedestal UNLV like everybody else does. And remember this, Matt Sluka was the leading passer and the leading rusher, and he still is going into this game for the Rebels. Eventually, the sands of the hourglass turn back around.
And it'll be interesting. This is also, like we said, they're playing tonight, so it's a Friday night game. Friday night in Vegas, it's crazy. So, it'll be interesting to see how that crowd actually is on a Friday night, not a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have the split screens working there. My early leans, I think Oregon is going to absolutely roll Michigan State. I'm going to lay the 23.5 there. I don't have a lean tonight on. I'm going to stay away. I'm going to watch UNLV and Syracuse with an eyeball because UNLV has captured the country's attention in football, but I don't necessarily think it's because of the football. So let's move on to the weekend. Speaking of Ohio State, who we talked about earlier, Jeremiah Smith, another guy that ended up in Mike's man crush. This dude, 18 years old, and I've heard it a couple of times, and I always pump the brakes. I know all of us kind of do on this, but Jeremiah Smith has a decent shot to end up being the best wide receiver to date that Ohio State has ever seen. They get their first, I think, test in Iowa. I'm not saying Iowa is going to pull an upset. Calm down, pump the brakes, but they're going to get their first, I think, real test. And we know what's coming up on October 12th. We just talked about Autzen and how loud they are and how raucous they are. We've got TJ After Dark. I can guarantee we'll be on this one. Oregon and Ohio State in a couple weeks. But I think this is the first time we get to see the Buckeyes get somebody that might be able to physically push back with them a little bit in the trenches.
You know what you're getting with Iowa. You're getting a team that plays really good defense. Offensively and defensively, on their offensive line, they're going to be big. They're going to push you around. As we know, the biggest problem, if you want to call it, with Iowa is offensively, can they put points up on the board? And that's going to be their biggest thing. They're going to be physical. We know that. This is a great opportunity for Ohio State to, again, show us what they can do before their bigger opponents. I really think they're going to have their way with Iowa. I really don't think it's going to be that close. I watched them last week against Michigan State. They kind of had their way with Michigan State. Michigan State and Iowa, to me, are kind of almost the same team. Iowa's a little bit better, but I think Ohio State's going to roll this one.
Yeah, and I think Ohio State hears some of the noise, too. Like, they know this is their chance to go, okay, you're saying we haven't played anybody. And calm down, Buckeyes fans, because you're always so defensive. I'm not knocking Ohio State for not really playing anybody yet, because now we finally get to the part of the season where everybody is kind of playing somebody, unless you play Florida or Mississippi State, but that's a different story for a different day. I think Ohio State, I do agree with you. I think Ohio State's going to come out firing. They're going to come out blazing. They're trying to hit that stride before the game up at Autzen. So we both expect the Buckeyes to roll. Another one, and this is a team, and I'm going to let you start with this one. This is a team you brought up in Laces Out on Wednesday. Indiana, undefeated Indiana, is at Northwestern on the lakefront. Is Indiana actually for real? Curtis Rourke, the quarterback for Indiana, he's played really well. You know me, one of my things that tells me a good quarterback is completion percentage, because that's not your checkdowns. That's your chance slants. That's your deep balls. That's everything. Rourke's at 73%, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1,300 yards. He doesn't get Jackson Dart, Cam Ward kind of love because he's not all the way up there. But Curtis Rourke has been really good for the Hoosiers, and Kirk Cignetti's got a great thing going right now for IU.
And they do. And listen, I mean, you look at their schedule. I mean, they went to UCLA and won, and I know UCLA is not UCLA football like it's been, but that's still a pretty big win for them. I mean, how many times would you have thought Indiana was going to go on the road out to the coast and win a game? I mean, it
Right.
just doesn't happen for that program. So that was a pretty big win, and they beat a decent Maryland team. So I mean, again, like you said, another team. Indiana, Missouri. These teams, the last couple of years, they're trying to build that program, build momentum. You know, we all know Indiana, it's a basketball school. Well, it's supposed to be a basketball school. That's what they're known for. And these coaches are now trying to get their feet wet in football and say, listen, we can do more than just bounce that ball around. We can play some pigskin, baby.
Yeah, in Indiana, 14-point favorites in this game. 41.5 is the over-under. That stadium that they temporarily set up in Northwestern is incredible.
Does it have to be temporary? Can they keep that?
You've seen the monstrosity they're building. Yeah, I would like to see them. It's kind of the same situation with Hawaii in their temporary stadium. I mean, Northwestern Stadium wasn't condemned like Hawaii's was, but we digress. Your favorite game of the weekend? I know you've talked about this one a little bit. In a couple hours from now, Mack's going to have the breakdown on our social channels, Mizzou and Texas A&M. But your favorite game outside of that this weekend is?
Tennessee and Arkansas. Listen, Arkansas, 2-2. I mean, listen, they're a good team. They could easily be undefeated. They could be in the Mack 12. They really, really could. This is a team that's made some mistakes. The key for Arkansas is this. They have to limit those mistakes. A lot of turnovers, lots of penalties, especially late in the game. That's what's hurt this team. Number one. Number two, they're actually a pretty good rushing team. Tennessee has got to be careful. They really do. This is a team that can come up and bite Tennessee in the back if they're not careful.
Yeah, it's an interesting game. I mean, I don't think I'm on the same page with you with Arkansas. I mean, they're tough. They choked off that one to Oklahoma State that they had in the bag. A couple of bad decisions late, and it ended up costing them a game. But when I look at this, and I think one of the things, and I mentioned it when I previewed the SEC in the preseason, Tennessee, we were going to finally get to see what they believed in Nico Iamaleava, and we've seen it, and it's only going to get better from here. We know Tennessee, again, like everybody else we're talking about, we're not comparing cupcakes to cupcakes, but now we are at the point of the season where we're starting to see teams get into conference play the big games. Obviously, again, I can't say it enough, but October 12th is going to be one of the greatest college football weekends that we've ever seen. That being said, one of the things that I even mentioned, and a lot of people thought on Tennessee, was their secondary was an issue. The Tennessee defense has been really, really good. And the Arkansas quarterback, Taylor Green, he's had a good year, 1236, as far as passing goes. But here's what I see, and here's why I don't think this is going to be a good game, and I think Tennessee gets the chance to plop it on the table and say, we're damn good. Taylor Green's got 5 touchdowns. He's also got 5 interceptions. And I think the Tennessee defense that we all thought wasn't going to be great, they were great up front, but we thought the secondary was an issue. I think that Tennessee secondary is a lot better than we thought they were. And you got a guy who's even on touchdowns and interceptions in Taylor Green. I think it's going to be a long day for the Hogs. I really do.
Yeah, well, and I can see that. Arkansas, like I said, has been so close in a couple of those games. Can they not make those turnovers? Can they not make those penalties and keep it close? We'll just have to wait and see. But Tennessee looks good. I mean, I don't disagree.
You can say this a little bit, and it'll back your Arkansas point. Maybe Tennessee is slightly looking ahead. And I'm not saying that because of who they play next, because who they play next sucks. It's the Florida Gators. But Tennessee and Florida is a big deal. After that, Tennessee has Alabama. Now, they get them at Neyland, but, I don't think we're going to catch Tennessee looking, maybe rivalry looking, but anybody in Tennessee knows Florida's hot garbage. That situation is a disaster. So I don't think we're going to get there. My favorite game of the weekend, and this is incredible, and I don't think people have put 2 and 2 together yet, but we've got Rutgers undefeated Rutgers at Nebraska. Nebraska's 7-point favorites. The over-under in this game is 40.5. Here's the thing to pay attention to, and it's kind of similar for Indiana in their regards of being undefeated. But when you get down to Rutgers' schedule, Rutgers doesn't have to play Michigan. They don't have to play Ohio State. And if you look at the meat of their schedule coming up, their toughest test, if you even want to call it toughest test, is October 25th when they go to USC. They go from Jersey to SoCal. This Rutgers team is really good. And here's the thing. Ethan Kaliamakis, I'm going to butcher his name. Kaliamakis, I'm not even going to try. You know who I'm talking about. Transferred over from Minnesota. I've tried to say his name right. Ethan, I apologize. He's got a big friggin' arm. 1,836 yards at Minnesota was his high before he transferred. He's already at 761 here. And Rutgers doesn't have anybody that's jumping off the table at you that's going to overly wow you. And maybe, and I'll say this because people that follow us know when we get into basketball, Rutgers at the rack is a thing for me. But this Rutgers team is good, and they have a pretty solid road paved in front of them. Obviously, we know Nebraska. I know how much you love Nebraska, how much DJ does. I love it too. Dylan Raiola, they bounce back after the loss. They get a win. It's in Lincoln. I think I'd be all over Rutgers if this game was in Jersey. With it being in Lincoln, it's a hostile-ass environment, and Nebraska fans are excited, and they should be. But this Rutgers team is not a team to sleep on.
No, and I agree with you on that, Mike. I have to say, I think because of where it's being played, and Nebraska knows they really, if they're going to have any chance of moving forward in the playoffs, they can't afford another loss, especially like this. So they're going to be ready for that game. Rutgers is just outside my Mac-12. They're right there. They're knocking at the door. A big opportunity, and that's the best part. I tell you, you know, we talked a lot about all these conferences changing and stuff like that. You know, we're starting to see some of these games that are, as you said, more meaningful, and it just we have to change our mindset a little bit. Would we have thought even a year ago that a Rutgers Nebraska game would be that meaningful? It's pretty interesting to think how meaningful it actually is.
Probably a year ago, it would have been more meaningful in basketball. Rutgers basketball, stay with us, Scarlet Knights fans, because when we get to basketball season, two of the most exciting freshmen in the country. Not to get off topic here, Kalik Manis is the quarterback for Rutgers. I probably still butchered it. Correct me, Rutgers fans. The dude's got a big arm. And at Minnesota, PJ Fleck likes the ground and pound, so nobody's really seen it yet. But after this week, he'll be halfway through his total of his best year at Minnesota. They have Wisconsin and UCLA and Jersey after that. Then that game that I mentioned against USC is on a Friday night in SoCal. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but Rutgers got the cream of the crop when it comes to schedules. Let's bounce to the NFL side. The big debate from last week was Mack's Bills and Mike's Jets, and both of them decided to pull their pants down and leave a steamer on the field. Do you feel any different on your thoughts from last week about your Buffalo Bills?
I'll tell you, I don't. And I'm going to tell you why. You went into Baltimore and got hammered by the Ravens. Who doesn't go into Baltimore and get hammered by the Ravens? This Ravens team is starting to understand how to play football. We'll get to that. I wasn't disappointed at all in that. My biggest thing now is in this 3-game gauntlet that we talked about, what do they do the next 2 weeks? How do they handle this Houston team? And then finally, how do they handle that game against the Jets? That's what's going to matter. Going 2-1 through those 3 games is not a big deal. I actually don't mind a loss, especially up in Baltimore. I don't think it's a bad loss. Baltimore is going to be there at the end. They're going to be a playoff team when it's all said and done, and probably going to have home field when it's all said and done as well. So to me, that's not a big deal. I know they didn't play well, but again, that's not a bad loss for me.
You want to put it on the table right here because all is falling and Robert Saleh can't coach and Aaron Rodgers doesn't like Robert Saleh, and they laid a stinker to the Broncos. Well, so did the Buccaneers, and we'll get to the Mike's power pyramid here in a second. I'm not freaking out about the Jets. They played a bad game. Every team plays a bad game at some point during the season. Look at the 49ers cruising against the Rams and forgot that there's 4 quarters in the game. Now, will the Niners get another bad game? Who knows? We'll wait to see. If they do, then we've got some serious questions. I'm not freaking out about where the Jets are. They've got a tough one this week, and we'll get to the international series here in a little bit. They've got the Vikings. I saw a Jets team that was a little discombobulated. The weather sucked. Bo Nix had one of the most impressive, horrible stat lines I've ever seen in the first half. But the Broncos' defense is tough. They are. And I don't think anybody is giving them credit for how good they are defensively because of how bad they are on the offensive side of the ball. I'm not freaking out. I believe in Robert Saleh. I know Aaron Rodgers is going to flex his muscles, if you will. So to settle the debate, I'm still taking the Jets to win the AFC East.
All right. Well, I think there's a lot of smoke in that Jets camp. I mean, you've got a coach complaining about a defensive coach complaining about his quarterback's cadence. Come on. What are you talking about? And Aaron Rodgers is one of the best ever with quarterback cadence, and he's complaining about it. I don't know. I think the Jets are in a mess. I just really do. I just think they're in a mess. I don't think Rodgers is he's old. He's not doing it for me. I don't think that this Jets team is going to be that good.
I'm still going to stand my ground. I don't know how it's going to end up. They've got a huge, tough matchup this weekend in London across the pond. Sometimes it's just good to get away, and we'll see if that happens. We'll get back to that game in a second. Today was the first day that the power pyramid dropped because we don't believe in power ranking teams in August, nor do we believe in power ranking teams for the next season the day after the Super Bowl ends. So we got enough. We got our first small sample. If you haven't seen the video yet, Kansas City 1, Minnesota 2, Detroit 3, Tampa Bay 4, Houston number 5. I'm going to pause right there because there's some controversial things apparently already about the Mike power pyramid that dropped on Wednesday. It's had a couple of days to situate itself. Kansas City, Minnesota, Detroit, Tampa, Houston. Do you have any problems? Not that I care. Do you have any problems with the power pyramid top 5?
I don't. Kansas City deserves to be at number 1. Minnesota deserves to be at number 2. If you want me to kind of pick it apart a little bit, I'll tell you, I was impressed with Seattle. I know they lost the other night. You've been on that Seattle team since the preseason. First time I really got to see him play, I was really impressed. I'd maybe say you could put him in a 5 spot instead of Houston, but I'm just picking on little things. I think your top 5 is fine.
Let's go 6 through 10. Buffalo, your Bills, my Commanders at 7, my Seahawks at 8. And then this is where we got a little flack from people, but I'm going to tell you this right now. And Steelers fans, I'm talking directly to you. I'm literally talking to one that I don't think is going to disagree with me right now. I have the Niners at 9, and I have New Orleans at 10. I have the Niners at 9 because top to bottom, and I know we don't play games on paper, so don't add us. The Niners team top to bottom 1 through 22 if you want to go there. And even the depth thing, and here you go. My knock on the Bills, the thing I've said about the Bills, and I even mentioned it in the power pyramid. I don't trust the depth of the Bills. The Niners are 2-2 going into this weekend's game, and they play a game Cardinals team. Like, I'm not expecting just a whitewash, but at the same time, you could see it. But I got a lot of respect for what Jonathan Gannon and that Cardinals team has done. But the Niners top to bottom, when you go talent for talent, knowing who they're not playing with, they're the best 2-2 team. I don't care what you say. New Orleans at a plus 57 oh, well, they played the Panthers. Yeah, okay. You can have a reason for X, Y, and Z. I believe more of the New Orleans team. How's that for double negative? New Orleans team. But, I think they're closer to what we saw in Dallas. Mm-hmm. They're not a Super Bowl team.
No.
Not saying that at all. But I think you're closer to what we saw against Dallas than you are to what we saw when they lost at home to Philly. And that in a plus 57, I don't care who you've played. You're plus 57 through 4 games. I'm sorry. And then Steeler fans are all up in arms, and I'm literally talking to a Steeler fan. I said it when we did the training camp tour. There isn't a single person on that offense that scares anybody. And their offensive coordinator doesn't scare a damn person either.
And they're banged up. Their offensive line is banged up to boot. When Freiermuth is the big target for you, I mean, I know they're going to say Pickens, but it's not. The Steelers are the Steelers. They've been the Steelers since the 70s. They're a good defensive team. They're a great defensive team. They really are. They're a really good, one of the top defensive teams in the league. But you're right, offensively. I mean, Justin Fields has done a great job. I've been happy with him. I mean, I cannot complain with what he's done. But you're right. If it
that was the right. We had this debate all preseason. Fields or Wilson, and what did I keep telling you? They're dumb if they don't go with Fields because you've got way more potential to do something with Fields than you do with Russ. Russ rode the Seattle train all the way to as far as he could take it. He's done. He's finished. You can see it in his face on the sidelines. Justin Fields is the way to go. I'm not saying he's going to be the answer after this year. They didn't pick up his option. But you're better off with Fields. The problem is, who in the hell is he throwing to?
Yeah, I know.
A Primanti Brothers sandwich would be a better option on offense than most of what he has.
Absolutely. It just, excuse me. I mean, they're just offensively. They're very vanilla. They really are. That's all there is to it. And they're not getting any sprinkles on that offense. Let me tell you, that's for sure. I know they're linked already to Davante Adams. That's not happening. The Steelers are not going to do that.
Everybody's linked to Davante Adams, including a beefy 5-layer at this point.
So, but I mean, listen, they don't deserve to be in the top 10. Yeah, they have a good record. Will they beat the Cowboys this week? They should beat the Cowboys. The Cowboys are banged up, especially on defense, but they're not a top 10 team right now.
Yeah, and before we go international here, you and I talked about this a little bit, a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts behind the scenes on the Mosh show this week in general, the crew, everybody involved. I am so jacked. And, obviously, growing up in the Bay Area, I'm a Niner fan. You'd think Sunday Night Football, Dallas at Pittsburgh. No, I'm a sports fan. We are broadcasters. That's what we do. I am stoked to watch this game at the Ketchup Bottle. I don't care who the sponsor is. Sunday night, you've got Cowboys at Steelers, and we don't get to see Cowboys at Steelers very often. The Steelers, early in the week here, as we're leaning into Friday, still favored in the game, 2.5. And granted, Dallas is banged up. Micah Parsons doesn't look like he's playing. Brandon Cooks, he's out. So Dallas is banged up, but Cowboys and Steelers, that's what primetime games are supposed to be, not the decrepit loser Giants hosting the Cowboys. And the Cowboys definitely played down to them. So I don't see it wrong to see Pittsburgh as the home favorite here. I don't.
No, I mean, they should be a favorite in this game. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I just don't know. I mean, again, it's almost what Dallas team are we going to get? I mean, talk about a team that's up and down all over the place. I mean, one week they look great. One week we just don't know. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder. They have to be. I mean, I really honestly think they've got to be playing for their coach's future. If they don't win, if they lose this game, how much longer are they going to go? I mean, they're going to be – Cowboys could be a mess. I feel the same way about the Steelers. If the Steelers don't win this game, what is their season going to be? I mean, I think it's a pivotal game for both teams.
Well, and if you look at it, when you look at the North, I mean, right now we've got to say it's a 2-team race. I mean, Cincinnati's looked absolutely lifeless. Yeah. Cleveland is a disaster. The Deshaun Watson contract, I'm going to go on full record right here. I know I'm not the first person to say this, but we talked about this kind of behind the scenes, the three of us the other day. The Deshaun Watson contract might go down as the worst contract in the history of sports. And I'm talking about Manny Machado's contract with the Padres. I'm talking about some of the ones prior to that. I'm talking about Ben Simmons, multiple disaster. Like the Deshaun Watson deal is so bad, and it looks worse and worse and worse every week. And I'm going to be honest here. I don't feel bad about it. I feel bad for the fans of Cleveland, but I'm sorry. I don't have to say what I think of Deshaun Watson as a whole and how that contract is. I'm not sad about it. So you've got Pittsburgh. You've got Baltimore. Cleveland and Cincinnati can still jump in. I have no faith in Cleveland. Cincinnati, I don't know what the hell is going on there, and I don't know how long the sands of the hourglass are going to bury out for Zach Taylor, but it's not looking good right now.
No, and that's that's usually the division I always think is that I always say, being a Steelers fan, I think it's one of the best divisions in football. It's definitely not. It's lost a lot of shine this year.
Let's hop across the pond. The Jets, who we spoke about, the Vikings, the number 2 team in the power pyramid this week. The glass slipper is still shiny on Sam Darnold. The only guy in the NFL with double-digit touchdown passes. The Jets, the Vikings in London. God-awful early for us West Coasters. We've got a 2.5-point, give or take 3-2, depending on what book you're looking at, in favor of the Jets, or in favor of the Vikings. Over-under is at 40.5. Again, now here's the thing. Last week, everybody thought Darnold and the Vikings would regress, playing the Packers at Lambeau. Oh, by the way, those of you that think that Darnold's going to regress, he has the best receiver in football. No disrespect to Jamar Chase. For my money, Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in football. That defense is playoff ready. What I think off the top of my head right away, international travel, 2 fantastic defenses, even though the Jets defense, they've had their moments on the bad side, but they right now are exactly. I mean, the Jets defense kept the Jets in that god-awful game on Sunday that looked like it was setting football back 10 years. I like the under here a lot because of the international travel and the defenses, but we're 4 weeks in, guys. What you've seen out of Sam Darnold, the only team that didn't like Sam Darnold is the Jets. Oh, it's interesting because I'm taking the Vikings to cover the spread, even though my Jets, as we're having this Jets-Bills thing, I still think the Jets win the division. I still think the Jets the next week beat Buffalo on Monday Night Football. I like the under, and I like the Vikings here because Sam Darnold doesn't forget. He hasn't forgotten that the one team in the league that hasn't liked him was the team that drafted him first.
I think the Vikings win this game, and I don't think it's close. I don't think the Jets are going to score a touchdown in this game. I think Sam Darnold has that team wrapped around his finger. He's going to get that defense fired up. They're going to get after that old man at quarterback. He's going to have a rough day. I think the Vikings in a landslide in this one. I'm telling you, 13-17, easy. 17-point victory, easy for the Vikings.
There you go. You heard it. Vegas Mack says alt line the crap out of that thing and take the Vikings big. I think we could see a little regression from the Vikings offense because of the strength of the Jets defense. But kind of to follow your point there, I think the Jets defense probably spends a lot of time on the field, which eventually catches up with any good defense if you're on the field most of the game.
I mean, but the Jets defense has been okay. They haven't really been what we saw the last couple of years. They haven't been that good. I'll tell you, I'm not because I'm wearing the purple shirt, But I'm all in on Minnesota. I like what I've seen so far. I think this team can make a deep run into the playoffs. I like them that much.
I'm going to spot check you right here. Robert Saleh, does he make it to the end of the year or not?
Yes, he'll make it to the end of the year, but I don't think he'll make it to next year. I don't think that they can bring in somebody at any point during the year that's going to make a difference for that team. But I don't think him and Rodgers. There's something going on there. One of them's going to have to go. We know it's not going to be Aaron, that's for sure. But he'll make it through the year, but he won't be back next year.
Oh, God, does Nathaniel Hackett get the Jets coaching job? Can you imagine what New York would do to Nathaniel Hackett if he got the Jets coaching job? Because that's what Aaron wants. Talk about a guy who would get eaten alive or be the biggest hero of all time in New York.
Yeah, well, it's a weird situation. I don't know. I'm not high on the Jets. I'm trying not to dish too much about Aaron. I mean, he'll send his bad juju our way, but I'm just saying I'm not a big fan. I mean, he was a good quarterback. I just don't think it's there anymore. I mean, yeah, he can still throw the ball a little bit, but just he still needed that little bit of mobility, and I just don't see it. He needs to be able to move a little bit, and he just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, technically he's designated as questionable. We saw him tweak the leg a little bit at the end of that game the other day, but it'll be interesting. We'll be up early for that one. We love the NFL's international series. We're not going to sit here and complain about it because we know it's about to expand and expand and expand. I just don't like, as a West Coaster, waking up at 6:30 in the morning to watch a football game. It is what it is. Let's whip around the NHL. It's almost hockey season.
We're almost there. You got me excited. I was like, hey, wait.
We're almost there, and I know you and TJ have been working on some stuff. I think hockey season's going to be great. Let's start Carolina and Chicago, the Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, DJ Moore Bowl, even though we know it's Andy Dalton and Caleb Williams. In Chicago, -4 the Bears, 41.5 is the over-under total here. Real quick as we whip through it, Mac, I haven't seen enough from Caleb Williams, and our fantastic crack staff the other day tweeted it out like, it'll come with time with Caleb, but good God, throw the damn ball away. He is taking a pounding early in the season, which not good for the long haul. We've got some is DJ Moore happy stuff. I'm not going to read into a whole lot of that right now. I like where the Bears are at, and we knew the Bears defense was going to be good. And now let's keep this in context here. The Packers off to a little bit of a sluggish start. We know the Vikings are up. We know Detroit. All of a sudden now we're looking at possibly the best division in football. I like where the Bears are at, but I think we're at the point now 4 weeks in where Caleb's got to have the clock that goes, oh, crap, I got to get rid of this damn thing. I'm not saying Carolina's going to beat them. I don't like the 4. I'm going to play this game if it gets under 3 because I think 4, despite how bad Carolina is, 4 is making me put a little bit too much trust in Caleb at that point. So I'm gonna stay away from this game unless it gets to Bears -2.5. But I don't think you're gonna get enough public backing on Carolina.
You're not backing their great new quarterback?
Red Rifle, Red Rocket. I mean, he gives them a way better. Let's be honest. I mean, he gives them a way better chance to win. But the problem with Carolina is they mortgaged Bank of America Stadium, literally, and probably part of Tobacco Road and everything else that you can name in Carolina to make the Bryce Young move and the DJ Moore trade and all that stuff. Like, Dalton gives them a way better chance, but their skill players they're just not good.
Yeah.
But that's how like right here, Switzerland, to use one of Tony's things, one of TJ's things, is like, I don't trust the Bears at 4. If I get froggy, I'll jump because the Bears defense can cover the 4. just like we saw against Captain Mayo, Will Levis, when they played in week 1. I got to see Caleb Williams get rid of the damn ball quicker.
All right. My first game, we got Baltimore and Cincinnati. Baltimore favored by 2.5. Listen, I'm telling you, Baltimore's figuring it out. They finally decided that, hey, we got a big horse in the backfield, and we're going to give him the ball more than just like 4 or 5 times in the game. Derrick Henry's going to make all that team that's so much better. I'm telling you right now, Baltimore's going to go on a run. I can see Baltimore winning the next 4 or 5, maybe even 6 games. They're going to go on quite a run. They're going to destroy Cincinnati this weekend.
I can't disagree with it. And obviously I picked the Bengals to win the AFC. I thought the defensive additions to the backside of the secondary were going to make a difference. The defense looks like it's settling in a little bit. They just look so disjointed on offense. Jamar Chase, a little bit of a slow start in week 1. He's rounding into form. It's just the tandem of Zach Moss and Chase Brown haven't really done the thing for them. And the Bengals are trying to emphasize the run, and they're not getting it there. Baltimore, again, was another one of my fringe teams. You had them very high on your list, obviously. Yeah. I like Baltimore. I think Baltimore was 11 on the power pyramid this week, just outside the top 10, just because that loss to the Raiders. It's the same thing with me, why I didn't put Tampa over Detroit, even though Tampa beat Detroit at Detroit, because Tampa had that game where they laid a flaming steamer against the Broncos. But Baltimore, I agree with you, is on the come up. Absolutely. Next one, we'll go to Miami and New England. New England, for most of the week, was a 1-point favorite. It's around a pick. The over-under is 36.5, which, okay. From Monday Night Football, I thought TJ made a perfect play, and we saw 2 bad teams fighting each other, and the game went over. I'm not touching the over-under. I am definitely not touching the New England -1. We don't know if it's going to be Skyler or Snoop Huntley. It should be Snoop Huntley. I think once he has a little more time now being in Miami, he's always wanted to play there. Tyreek Hill's frustrated. All the Dolphins are frustrated, and they should be. That team is loaded with talent, and you lose a guy like Tua, it makes a big difference. But, I wouldn't bet this game, Mac, with your stacks of money.
Attaboy. Listen, I'm kind of, I watch a lot of Boston sports stuff, and listen, they're ripping Mayo to shreds. One of the best lines I heard this week is, if Belichick and McDaniels were here, we'd be undefeated. Well, okay, now that's a bit of a stretch, but listen, sorry, neither of these teams are good. Listen, if I'm the Patriots, how much longer do I not allow my young quarterback to maybe get some experience at this point? I mean, I know they're not that good of a team.
That's a lot from you, because you're the proponent of sit the young guys. We don't have to play them right away.
I know, but at this point, you're losing this season. I mean, you know how Boston works, okay? Mm-hmm. The Red Sox are done, so you don't have to worry about them. This is the time for the Patriots to shine. Hey, oh, by the way, you know what's coming down the road in another week? The Bruins. Oh, and wait, there's that World Championship team. The Celtics are coming down the road as well. And what are you putting out there? Like you said, you're putting a bag of turd out there every week. You're losing the fans. This is, you hear all these rankings. The best team in Boston, it's the Patriots every year. Well, you know what? It's not the Patriots right now, and it's not even close. They may be ahead of the Red Sox, but I don't know about how much. But they got to figure it out, because that fan base doesn't take it, and they're looking at Kraft, they're looking at Mayo. They got to do something to make these fans interested, because they're not, and they're going to lose it. Because, like I said, the puck drops next week for the Bruins. You're going to lose them.
Yeah, it's not a lobster. It's not a lobster roll in Boston anymore. It's a crap roll. Let's move on, because I think I'm sick to my stomach. You got the next one. Whip us around.
We got the Colts and the Jags. Okay, I'm going to come out and say it. We got to do something with the Jags. We got to figure this team out. We got to maybe call the doctor or something and figure this team out. Mike's medicine. Or maybe we need to get a funeral for them or something. Put them to bed. I don't know. This has got to be not just this year. I said this last year. To me, this is the most frustrating team in football. You look at it, and they're supposed to be good. You look, they got a great quarterback, a running back, they got all this stuff.
Do they though? When was the last time Trevor Lawrence won a game?
They're supposed to. It's what you think. It's an image. But it's not. It's oh my God. I'm so frustrated with this team. The Colts last week took it to the Steelers. They played well. How are they going to respond now? I haven't seen the latest, but I don't think Richardson's going to be able to play this weekend. So that's, I think it's going to hurt them. So what does that mean? That means the Jags are probably going to come out this week and win, and prove me wrong. But I'm so over that team. I'm done. They drive me crazy.
I can't guarantee it because I'm not in the room, but I feel strongly to say it. I would be absolutely floored if they start 0-5 with a home loss to the Colts, if Doug Peterson is not sent packing on Sunday night. I don't see them losing to the Colts. That Colts team is a lot tougher with or without Richardson. Remember, oh, by the way, Joe Flacco is there. If Richardson can't go, it just like Jacksonville offensively, like they made all these changes and this, that, and the other thing. The biggest change they made is playing for Tennessee right now, and I think it's hurting them offensively tenfold.
Did you see his press conference this week when they asked him about when you first came in? You said if they had to have changes, you'd look into it, and he's not calling the play. And he goes, "Well, I'll take it under consideration." I'm like, dude, you're the head coach of an NFL team. Stand up and answer the damn questions. You should. If you don't like what's going on, then make some changes. But that team frustrates me. Move on.
Shout out to our social squad who reposted that exact thing on our X account saying, I think their exact quote, guys, I know you're off for the night. You're welcome. Was, tell me you're done or you think you're done without telling us you're done or you know you're done. Cleveland, speaking of disasters, at Washington, Mike's Commanders. Jaden Daniels, man, I said it it was our first training camp tour. My surprise team to go to the playoffs because I believe in Dan Quinn. Just like Joe Henry. I believe in Dan Quinn. I love what they're doing. I don't expect every week to be perfect. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. They are in a prime position in a really bad division to make the playoffs and prove my prediction true. Jaden Daniels, man, all of us, TJ, you, myself, we all had the experience watching him at ASU. I still remember the touchdown pass he threw to Brandon Ayuk that was electrifying. And then he went to LSU, obviously won the Heisman. But it was kind of funny because until Cam Taylor-Britt opened his big effing mouth going into Monday Night Football and said it was a cute college offense, and then they got punched square in the jaw, and then they came into Arizona. And again, I think the Cardinals are another year away from being a fringe playoff team, but they came into Arizona and they beat the ever-loving crap out of the Cardinals on both sides of the ball. I think Washington absolutely wipes the floor with Cleveland because that situation in Cleveland's a dumpster fire.
Absolutely. And you know what? I got to say this. My impression of Daniels is this. The time that I saw him play was here in the Vegas Bowl against Wisconsin. And he couldn't complete a pass if Wisconsin had one person on defense. He was that bad. And to watch what he's done over the last couple of years, man, I'll tell you, I got mad respect for him right now. I mean, he has really, really turned it around. And I'll tell you what, that Washington team is good. I agree. I don't see how they lose this game.
Yeah, no. And let's catch up on a couple. Let's pass through a couple of these real fast. We'll get to our last kind of feature game. We already talked about the Steelers and the Cowboys. Giants in Seattle. Seattle, obviously, I am high on. You stated your case on Seattle. They get the Giants. The only concern I have is there's still some defensive line injuries for the Seahawks. I believe in Mike McDonald, not Mike McDaniel right now. Mike McDonald and what he's done. I've said it all year. They've got to shore up the defensive line. But here's the only thing I see for Seattle coming off of an emotional, hard-fought game. They come home to play the dog crap Giants, who they should walk the field with. They've got the situation with San Francisco on Thursday Night Football the week after that. Maybe a look ahead. I don't think Mike McDonald is going to let him do it. I said my case on McDonald last week. He is one of two defensive coordinators that have made Brock Purdy look pedestrian on Christmas last year. I think Seattle wipes the field with them. Obviously, Green Bay and LA, the Rams, that's going to be an interesting disaster. We've got Vegas and Denver, again, interesting disasters. Last game I want to hit on before we get to our final thoughts here, because I know this has a lot for both of us. Buffalo, game 2 of the mini gauntlet. They're in Houston to play the Texans. My concern with the Texans, I don't see as much defensively from them so far as I did last year, but Bills fans, call me a hater, go ahead. I think this is the right team to face for Houston's defense to kind of get a little back level because, again, Bills fans, I don't hate you. I've picked you guys to go to the Super Bowl for the better part of the last 5 years. I don't trust your depth at all, and I think Houston gets right defensively. I think they get right in a big way on Sunday.
Yeah, Houston's that weird team. It's like, they're 3-1. You look at them, they played okay. They haven't, like, the shine hasn't been on them like it was last year. But they're winning games, and that's all that matters. And they're doing it well.
3-1 in a god awful division too is a good start for them.
Is a good start. This one's a tough one for me. I think the Bills are going to bounce back. I wonder how much losing Monday night is going to take out of them, knowing that they still have the Jets the following week. This is kind of like, it's not really a trap game, but it kind of is a trap game. Do they look ahead a little bit that, hey, we really want to be set and ready for the Jets and maybe not take this one as serious as we need? That would be my biggest thing. But I think these are really two evenly matched teams. I think this is going to be a good matchup. I can see this one coming down to field goal at the end.
Well, and the funny thing about this game too is I one of the things that nobody's really talking about, at least not yet, is we all heard Stephon Diggs was the problem in Buffalo. And Buffalo came out of the gates and they looked better. We might not ever know the answer to it, and it's none of our business. Diggs has moved on. The Bills have moved on. The Bills got jumped right from the start. When you break down the stats from last Sunday night, like stat-wise, and this is why numbers don't always tell you the whole story of a game, stat-wise, neither quarterback played well. Henry had the bomb touchdown right out of the chute. Baltimore's defense roughed up Allen a lot. But when you look at the stats, it was a pretty even game. You've got the Diggs factor. I know Allen's going to want to play great. They'll exchange their pleasantries. They'll push the cameras away. I think this is a get-right spot for Houston. And I see Buffalo, and I saw this a couple weeks ago, 1-2 in this mini gauntlet. And now who are the Bills? And I think that's one of the biggest questions in the AFC right now. So plenty of stuff. Final words. I'm going to start here real quick. NFL officiating. Obviously, it's one of the things that gets all the attention in the world. I'm not going to cite everything because we don't have 7 more hours to do it. I understand that officials are humans. They make mistakes. It happens. What I don't have any tolerance for is when you have automatic initiated video review and it is not used. What am I talking about? I don't think it would have made the difference on Monday night, so calm down before you say that. DK Metcalf, knee down in the end zone, 2-point conversion on a conversion play that should have been automatically reviewed. and the day after the game we find out that, oh, by the way, we should have automatically reviewed it, that I have zero tolerance for. There's holding on every damn play. We know the illegal procedures and the emphasis on certain things, the stupid dynamic kickoff rule. But to me, there is zero excuse for a day after apology when you have the technology in place to initiate a video review, especially in a good game. The only good game you gave us on Monday, the questionable pass interference call on Tyler Lockett. There was horrible calls on both sides of the field all the way through. The flow of the game Monday night was hindered by shit is what it was. If you have video review that you can utilize and it should be automatically initiated, Roger, there is zero excuse for a day after apology.
All right. Well, I agree. We should have
Sorry.
to. Here we go. It's all good. Hey, what's happening in the NFL? Are things changing? Or is maybe wait a minute. Put my glasses on. Maybe that makes a difference. What's happening to the quarterbacks? I thought this was a quarterbacks league. I thought offenses were supposed to be running the NFL. And I don't see it. With my glasses on or off. It's not happening. Are we seeing a change? Are defenses starting to figure this out? Is the quarterback position maybe not as big of a spot as we think it is or was? And if not, what are we looking at? Are we seeing maybe a reemergence, a rebirth of the running back position? Maybe? I don't know. But it's just interesting to me that the quarterback position, that shine on the quarterback position seems to have gone away. Shine, it's gone. It's not there this year. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because it's early in the year. And, like baseball, hitters are sometimes ahead of the pitchers. Maybe defenses are a little ahead of the offense because nobody plays in the preseason games. I don't know, but I'm not seeing that offense that we saw the last couple of years.
It's going to be a fun weekend of football. Obviously, we've got you all covered. Mack's going to be up on our social channels here in a few hours. A&M and Mizzou, a big game in the morning. And we've got two special ones on Saturday for you. TJ After Dark, as always on Saturday. He's going to go Big Ten romping. I'm going back to my stomping grounds. We're going to go double After Dark. Cal and Miami from Berkeley. Game day will be there in the morning. Bay Area, I'm telling you, all my peeps back home. I know a lot of you are hurting because of the A's. Bring it. It is a 6 a.m. start time in the Bay. Last time Cal got a ranked team at home, it was pretty friggin' cool. We've got 5 for 500 coming this week. We were close last week. We actually got the closest we did. We've got the Sunday spread. We've got Sunday night football. Mack's going to take a couple of days and venture away from us here. He'll be back next week, but he's got A&M and Mizzou. Mack, I'm going to miss you for a couple of days, but I'm sure not that much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Lots of love. Love for that Vegas Mack hat.
For 76-year-old TJ on his birthday weekend, I'm Mike. We are out. Until next week, we'll talk to you then.